It started off like any other evening.
Claire had invited me over for dinner, just a casual get-together like we used to do before life got too busy. She was the kind of friend who remembered my favorite wine and always had my favorite snacks on hand. We'd been inseparable since college, laughing through breakups, celebrating new jobs, supporting each other through everything life threw at us. She was more than a best friend. She was family.
Claire had married Daniel about 3 years ago. I remember being so happy for her.
He seemed like the stable, respectful kind, quiet, but not cold. A bit reserved, but Claire needed someone to balance her out.
They looked good together. I never really paid him much attention.
He was Claire's, and I was never the type to cross that line. That night, the three of us sat around the table eating pasta and drinking wine. The conversation was easy, light. Claire dominated most of it, telling stories from work, laughing about a silly client. Daniel listened, chiming in here and there with a sarcastic remark that made Claire roll her eyes and me chuckle.
It was familiar, comfortable, until it wasn't.
At one point, I looked up mid-sentence and saw Daniel already looking at me.
It wasn't just a glance. It wasn't casual or passing. It was one of those looks that lingers a little too long.
Not intense, not overt,
but deliberate, curious.
Our eyes met, and I instinctively looked away, pretending to focus on my glass.
But I felt it, something shift in the air.
A question I hadn't asked suddenly floated in the silence. Did he mean to look at me like that?
I tried to ignore it. I really did.
But the awareness wouldn't leave. My skin felt warmer.
My thoughts more scattered.
I told myself I was overthinking. It was just a look. Maybe he was zoning out. Maybe I imagined the whole thing.
Maybe I wanted to imagine it.
After dinner, Claire excused herself to take a phone call from her sister. Daniel started clearing the dishes while I sat there, fiddling with the edge of my napkin.
He asked if I wanted more wine.
I said no, but he poured a little more into my glass anyway, giving a slight smirk. Not arrogant, more like he knew he was bending some invisible rule.
And I let him.
He sat down across from me again, the space between us feeling smaller than it had a few minutes before. The silence wasn't awkward, but it wasn't easy either.
There was weight in it.
Something unspoken.
Then he said something I didn't expect.
You and Claire, you've been friends a long time.
I nodded.
Feels like forever. She's lucky to have you around.
That was it. Just a sentence. Just a compliment.
But his voice was softer, like it was meant just for me.
I looked at him again. His eyes held mine this time.
Neither of us looked away. The pause stretched too long to be innocent. I felt a flutter deep in my stomach, something I hadn't felt in a while. It scared me how quickly it came. Claire returned a few minutes later, oblivious and cheerful, carrying on the conversation like nothing had changed.
And maybe for her, nothing had.
But I sat there, nodding, laughing, trying to listen, while a new awareness sat quietly in the space between me and Daniel. I kept replaying that look in my head on the drive home.
I told myself I didn't flirt back. I hadn't said anything wrong. But I also didn't shut it down. I didn't distance myself.
I didn't do the thing a best friend is supposed to do.
Instead, I let it happen. I told myself it was harmless. That people are curious. It didn't mean anything. He was just being nice. I was just being polite.
But even in that moment, I knew that wasn't true.
I hadn't felt seen like that in a long time.
I'd been drifting through half-hearted dates and long stretches of loneliness that I covered with busy schedules and group chats. And then, suddenly, someone noticed me.
Someone who shouldn't have.
It's easy to judge a moment after it passes.
But when you're in it, it feels like a choice you're still allowed to make.
And in that moment, I didn't walk away. I stayed.
And I let him look.
The days after that dinner stretched out longer than they should have.
I told myself to forget it. Just a passing glance.
But it stayed with me, Daniel's eyes, that pause in the air, the way he looked at me like I was something more than his wife's best friend. I didn't know what bothered me more, that he looked, or that I noticed, and liked it. I wasn't proud of the way I replayed the moment in my head over and over, like a scene from a movie I couldn't stop watching. There was something about being seen, not just politely acknowledged, but noticed in a way that felt charged.
And wrong. And real.
A few days later, Claire texted asking if I could drop off a bag she'd left at my apartment. She had forgotten it after dinner and needed it for a work trip. She was running late and asked if I could swing by her place and leave it with Daniel. I almost said no.
Not because I was too busy, but because I knew what that might feel like. Still, I said yes.
And then I spent way too long getting ready for a 5-minute errand.
I told myself I was being ridiculous. I wasn't dressing up for him.
But as I stood outside their door with the bag in my hand, I felt my heart racing like I was about to do something wrong, even though I hadn't done anything yet.
Daniel opened the door.
He was in a faded t-shirt, barefoot, coffee in hand.
The most ordinary thing.
And yet everything felt tense the moment he said my name.
He smiled. She said you'd be stopping by. I handed him the bag. Just dropping this off.
She left it after dinner.
He didn't move to take it right away.
Want to come in for a minute?
I hesitated, just a beat. But I stepped inside. The apartment was quiet. The same familiar space where we'd all laughed just a few nights earlier. But now it felt different. Or maybe I did. I didn't stay long.
He made coffee. We talked, nothing suggestive, nothing inappropriate. But the conversation was slower. Less filtered. He asked about my work, my life.
Really asked. Listened.
When I left,
he didn't touch me. Didn't say anything wrong.
But I felt a buzz beneath my skin like something had shifted again.
I told myself this was harmless. That Claire was my best friend, and I would never do anything to hurt her. I reminded myself of all the reasons I respected their marriage. But then the excuses started to slip in like smoke under a door. Claire had changed.
She was distracted, always busy, barely talked about Daniel unless she was complaining. She'd even said to me once, half laughing, "Sometimes I think Daniel and I are just roommates now."
I hadn't thought much of it then, but now, I couldn't help but wonder. Was he unhappy? Was I just reading into things? Or worse, was I looking for a reason to justify the way I felt? Another week passed. Claire invited me to a small backyard get-together. Nothing big.
A few friends, some drinks, easy conversation.
She drank too much too quickly. By the end of the night, she was upstairs sleeping it off. I stayed behind to help clean up, more out of guilt than politeness. Daniel and I ended up outside by the fire pit, the warm glow of the flames flickering between us. Neither of us said much at first. The air was cool, quiet, intimate in a way that felt dangerous. He finally spoke, voice low. "You ever feel like you're in a room full of people, and no one really sees you?" I didn't answer right away. Because yes, I knew exactly what that felt like. He looked at me, not just at my face, but into me. And in that silence, something passed between us that wasn't friendship. It wasn't even temptation. It was recognition. He reached for my hand. It was slow, like he was giving me time to move. But I didn't move. I let him hold it. It was just a touch. That's all. But it was the first moment we both knew a line had been drawn, and neither of us stepped away from it. It happened 2 days later. Claire had gone to visit her mother for the weekend, leaving Daniel home alone. She mentioned it in passing, casually, like it was nothing. I nodded, smiled, promised to check in on her cat if needed. I didn't plan anything. That's what I told myself. But that morning, I put on a sweater I knew looked good on me. I passed by their neighborhood and told myself I was just in the area. Then I texted Daniel. "Hey, forgot to ask, did you ever finish that book we talked about?" His reply came fast. Too fast. "Still reading it. You want to come by? I just made coffee." Just like that. Like it was normal. I stood on their doorstep again, this time under a cloudier sky. My heart beat faster than it should have. I told myself this was innocent. Again. I told myself I was just being friendly. He opened the door. Smiled like he was expecting me. Claire's shoes were gone from the entryway. Her scent wasn't in the air. Just his cologne, warm and subtle. The space between us felt louder than ever. We sat on the couch. Talked about the book. About nothing. About everything. But every word we spoke had another one hidden underneath it, unspoken and heavy. Then, at one point, I looked over. He was already looking at me. I didn't move away when he leaned closer. I didn't stop him when his hand brushed against my knee. I didn't interrupt when his lips met mine, soft, searching, unsure for only a second. I kissed him back. It wasn't passionate. It wasn't rushed. It was slow. Careful. Like we both knew we were doing something that couldn't be undone. I don't remember how it escalated. Just that, before I knew it, we were in his bedroom, Claire's bedroom. The sunlight coming through the curtains felt like it was watching us. I saw her framed photo on the nightstand and still, I didn't stop. And neither did he.
Afterward, we didn't say much. He pulled the sheets over his chest. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. The weight of it hit me all at once. What I'd done. What we'd done.
It wasn't romantic. It wasn't thrilling. It wasn't anything I thought it might be. It was quiet. Ugly. I stood up, got dressed in silence.
Daniel didn't try to stop me. He just watched, and when I opened the door to leave, he only said one thing. This wasn't nothing.
I didn't reply. I couldn't.
I walked out of the apartment, down the stairs, out into the bright afternoon light that suddenly felt too harsh.
My stomach turned the whole drive home.
My hands shook when I finally sat on my bed and let the weight of it collapse on top of me. Claire texted an hour later. Made it to my mom's safely.
Miss you already, 2 hearts. I stared at the message. I didn't respond.
Later that night, Daniel texted too. We need to talk.
I didn't answer him either. Because I didn't want to talk.
I didn't want to explain something that felt both deliberate and impossible to justify. The next day, I avoided Claire's calls.
Told her I wasn't feeling well.
She offered to bring soup, and I told her no, I just needed to rest.
She believed me. Of course she did. That was the part that hurt the most.
The way she trusted me without question. She didn't know that the person she considered her safest space had become something else entirely.
I don't know why I let it happen. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was weakness.
Maybe it was the need to feel wanted, just once, deeply, by someone who wasn't supposed to want me.
I haven't told her. I don't think I ever will. Daniel and I haven't spoken since that day. No calls. No messages. Nothing.
It's like we both knew that what we did existed in a separate world, one we couldn't afford to live in for more than a moment.
Sometimes I still see her. We go for coffee, like nothing's changed. She tells me about her life, her job, her plans for the future. She smiles.
And I sit there, nodding, pretending that I'm still the person she thinks I am.
I wish I could say I regret it every second.
That it was a mistake I would undo if I could. But the truth is,
I don't know how I feel about it. Not fully. Not honestly.
Because part of me still remembers the way he looked at me like I was visible. And part of me still let him.